Today we're going to be removing the masking tape and finishing our watercolor painting. So the first thing that you need to do is, if you have any white space left on your paper, you are going to use watercolor paints to finish filling that in. Now today it is very important that you don't use too much water, because otherwise it's going to make it really hard to remove the tape. So use as little water as possible and brush those colors on top of the paint, just like we did last time. When your painting is all full of color, the next step is going to be removing the tape. So you're just going to kind of use your fingers and gently start to pull away the masking tape, and it should be white underneath, so that we'll have nice white birch trees standing out from our colorful background. When the tape is all removed, we are going to add the black detail to each trunk of our birch tree. You're going to have a little tiny piece of cardboard, and one end is going to be the handle and one end is going to be for painting. So make sure that you don't switch up the ends or you'll have a hand with black paint all over it. So here's my handle, and I'm just going to dip the end into some black paint. I'm not scooping it like a chip, I'm just dipping it a little bit. And actually I think I got too much, so I might want to wipe off just a little bit on the edge. And then once you have just a tiny bit of paint on your cardboard, we're going to go to the edge of one of our birch trees and we're going to scrape it across horizontally. And you can do several scrapes with the same dip of paint, because we don't want the black to stand out too much. Now when you're really running out, you can go back and get just a tiny bit more and continue going all the way up your tree trunk. And it should just be leaving a little bit of black paint. It shouldn't be filling in the whole thing. There should definitely be a lot of white left on your tree. Because when we look at the pictures of birch trees, we see that the trunk is basically white. Well, I almost got too much. And just a little bit of black detail. Now you can do it on the left side and on the right side a little bit as well, especially if you didn't get too much paint the first time around. You can come and add a little bit on the other side. Not only am I going to do the trunks, but using just a tiny bit, I can even go and get a little on the tiny little branches as well. And that black paint makes it really look like a birch tree, and it also makes it stand out a lot more on our painting, and it makes it really the focal point. As I'm working, I'm being very careful not to smear the black paint that I've done with my hand. So I'm really paying attention to how I hold my paper and how I scrape my cardboard. I'm just going to keep going until all of my birch branches and trunks have black paint. When your birch trees look the way you like them, the final step is adding just a little bit more watercolor paint to add some details to our background. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to take either a dark blue or a black, or maybe even both, a darker color, purple works good too, and I like to add a diagonal line shadow from the bottom of each trunk. So I'm not going straight down. A diagonal line is a slanted line. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, because in nature the grass and the wobbly tree trunks would not create a perfectly straight line shadow. And I'm going to mix in a little bit of black to my shadow to kind of darken it up just a little bit. And you can make your diagonal line slant to the right or the left, but just make sure that you make all of your diagonal lines go the same way, or your picture will look kind of weird. The next thing that we can do is we can add some texture to our background. So if I want this to look a little more like grass, I'm going to go back and take some of the same colors that I already used in that area, like an orange, red, or yellow, I guess, for this one. And I can just add some little flicks to make it look like there's some grass growing. And I don't want it to stand out too much. I might just kind of use some really light color for this part. In the background, you can also add some little taps that make it look more like clumps of leaves. So now I'm not really using a flicking motion, I'm using a tapping motion. So you can use either this tapping or the flicking to create some really good textures all over your paper. I'm just going to keep on going with my textures until I am happy with the amount of detail that my background has. Now, as I was tapping, I was really careful not to get any color on top of my white trees, and I was also being really careful not to smear my black paint. After you have added all of your textures with watercolor, we're going to leave our paintings to dry.